Welcome to the Apartment Guys, where we dive deep into all things multifamily investing. Our mission is to educate, inspire, and empower real estate investors to reach their highest potential. Each week, host Tate Seamer interviews high-level guests from all over the industry who are sure to bring valuable, actionable ideas that will propel your career to the next level. Whether you're just starting out or a seasoned investor, you are in the right place. And now your host, the Apartment Guy, Tate Seamer.
Welcome everybody back. Another episode of the Apartment Guys coming at you. And I've got Mr. It's actually Lieutenant Timothy Lyons with us on the show today. And very honored to have you with us, sir. Tim is a 16-year veteran of the New York City Fire Department. And I guess first and foremost, thank you so much for your service.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And believe me, it's a pleasure to be a firefighter. I love it every day. Yeah,
we've actually kind of a side note. We've got two partners in Columbus, Ohio that are both active duty firefighters. And so I've gotten to live in their world just a little bit here and there.
Is that Seth? Is that Seth?
Seth Teagle, yeah.
Teagle, yeah.
He's a celebrity, man. He's on all the podcasts these days, and I was just razzing him this morning about all the good stuff he's doing. But no, he's a force, physically and otherwise. Seth's about probably 6'10" or something like that.
So quick story about Seth. He messaged me that he was coming to New York City a couple weeks ago, and I said, "Hey, listen, I'm at the firehouse. You're more than welcome to come by." Him and his wife, and cool. They did. They had dinner in the city. They met some people, and then he ended up stopping by the firehouse and hanging out with us. So and he was just a guest on my podcast. So I love Seth, and it's not every day you hear about firefighters and multifamily, but it's nice to meet up with them.
Yeah, we're lucky enough to be partnered up with Seth and Tim Shaw on a couple of deals there in Central Ohio. So, well, Tim, you have quite a success story. In an 18-month period alone, you went from 3 units to 720 units, worth north of 100 million. And we were just talking before the show. You're now over 3,000 units at 320 million. in assets under management. That is super impressive. And to be a lieutenant in the New York City Fire Department and working that hard I can't imagine how hard that amount of work would be to doing what you guys have done. Tell us how that happens, man. Like, how did you make that all work? That's awesome.
Well, I wish I could tell you that it was easy and that I followed the blueprint and I knew everything that I was doing every step of the way. But unfortunately, as entrepreneurs know, that just simply is not the case. But really, I mean, look, I was a W-2. I am a W-2 employee. Like you said, I've been a firefighter in New York City, a job that I absolutely love for about 16 and a half years now. And, a lot of firefighters have second careers. So when they work their 24-hour shift, they have a couple of days off and then they'll go do something else. Mm-hmm. And a lot of guys are small business owners. They'll be involved in the trades. And, I just simply was not a handy guy growing up, and my parents weren't handy, and I just didn't have any of that. So I ended up going back to nursing school, and a couple of guys that I worked with were nurses, and they had the nice cars in the firehouse parking lot, and their wives didn't work, and they always had side work when they wanted it. So I also like to joke that I was pre-med for about 15 minutes back in college until I joined that fraternity, and then I wasn't pre-med anymore. Funny how that worked. But anyway, so I became a nurse, and I would work 12-hour shifts, and I always had side work as much as I wanted, as little as I wanted. And things were great. I got married. We went on a couple of vacations a year. The retirement accounts were getting funded. We had some savings. But, like a lot of people, I was following that linear trajectory, right? Go to school, get good grades, get a good job, max out your 401k, buy a house, have some kids. And then, one day you'll be able to, retire and enjoy some of that. And it never was sitting well with me, just having that thought about, like struggling with your time and to make your money. And I just knew there was a better way. And I had a burning desire to be, do, and have more. And it wasn't because I was unsatisfied with my career choice or anything like that. It just, I knew I was capable of doing more. So, real estate was one of those things I always wanted to get into. I just never really applied myself to the point of taking action. So with that being said, I would read articles, I'd read books, I'd listen to YouTube videos about it, but I never really took the next step. And it took a family vacation. By the time I had 3 little girls, and I was married and 2 jobs and a dog. I was on a family vacation in the Outer Banks, North Carolina, and I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, like a lot of real estate entrepreneurs. And that was a book that kind of came back and forth to the firehouse with me for over a year, and I never took it out of my overnight bag, and I just kind of sat there. And I read this book in 2 days. And
Wow.
That day, I remember sitting on the beach next to my wife, and I said, "Babe," I said, "I'm going to be a real estate investor." And she kind of just gave me a look and a grin and say, "Okay, Tim, like whatever you say." That was July of 19. So by November of 19, I was closing on a 3-unit rental property. And people are kind of blown away by that. Like, listen, 4 months after reading a book, you're buying real estate. Like, how does that work? And listen, it's something that I wanted to do. And one of my mentors now kind of has an elementary equation that he talks about, and he talks about education times action will lead to your results. And it sounds so simple and kind of cliche, but it's really powerful when you think about it. And it's kind of been a guiding principle of Cityside Capital and just my life in general, right? You can't do anything if you're not educated, and nothing will ever get done if you don't take action.
Right.
So I wanted the experience of being a landlord. I wanted to know what it was like. I wanted to know what it was like collecting rent, getting phone calls, like that proverbial 2 a.m. toilet, phone call everybody talks about.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that, and I just actually sold it November of 21 after holding it for 2 years and doing really well. I just wanted to test the market and ended up coming out on top. So, but you know what? I was cash flowing. I did a little better on my taxes. That first year, my wife had the proof of concept. I had the proof of concept. I knew it was going to be a scalable model. And I initially thought I should just buy 30 of these over the course of my life, and I'd be on Easy Street one day, right? But for some reason, I kept on hearing on podcasts, multifamily syndication, multifamily this, multifamily that. And, I kind of looked around at some websites and some operators, and it just seemed very complicated. It seemed, like a different language: cap rates, spreadsheets, net operating income, economic loss to lease, and I was like, oh my God, what are these guys talking about? I did some back of the napkin, underwriting for my 3-unit, which I probably could have done a little better on. But so I decided to go against my limiting beliefs. And I ended up getting some coaching and some mentorship around multifamily. And that was literally the thing that launched, me and my company into the next level. Just being surrounded by like-minded folks who are all focused on the same thing, who are more than giving with their time, their energy, their knowledge, their expertise. The education piece of that network is really small, even though it's powerful. But being around the right people in the network really was the thing that moved the needle the most.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about the coaching mentoring that you got that kind of moved the needle for you too. That I know that's been huge for me in our trajectory through a couple different coaches and mentors. But talk to me about yours.
Yeah, I think growing up in New York City, area, I had a healthy dose of skepticism around paying anybody for anything, right? Coaching. I used to hear people on a podcast, I spend $100,000 on coaching a year. I'm like, oh my God, you know how much real estate you could buy and what you could do with that $100,000? Why would you ever spend that on coaching? But I wasn't there yet. I still had a lot of limiting beliefs. And then when I started to investigate some of the coaching programs, I started to, get in touch with some of the students that I could find on like social media or LinkedIn, whatever. I started to ask him, what is your experience, and what's the value that you've gotten from these coaching groups? And they had the best things to say. It totally changed my mind. Where I was looking at it from a dollars and cents, what's my ROI going to be? I was missing the point on the big picture. So I've talked to my wife about it, and we decided to go all in. I mean, she knows, she watched me go through nursing school while working full time and being a dad. And, she saw me working the two jobs. So she knows that whatever I commit to, I'm going to get done. And when we decided to join the program, I really did it for the education. I needed to know how to underwrite properties, how to purchase, a property, how to submit an LOI. I was still thinking very tactically. But what I found was through the coaching piece of it, being aligned with an accountability coach, with a deal coach, with an accountability pod, which is a group of, your peers, meeting, once a week for an hour for like a laser session of, hey, what are you doing? What are you up to? What did you accomplish? What did you miss on? What can we support you with? And by the way, I did this March of 2020, and COVID was right around the corner, right? Probably the worst time to get into real estate investing, or so I thought.
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
So very uncertain time, but I just kept at it, and people ask me all the time, like, how did you get to be, to rise so quickly? And a quick little story is, since I work in a very poor neighborhood in Queens, at the fire department, and, when Corona finally hit us, it hit us hard. Like the national news would come to my neighborhood and to the local hospital and be like, this is the epicenter of, COVID in our country. And we were doing CPR on people nonstop, 24 hours at a time. Like it's as if the fires knew that there was something going on. There was no fires, there was no car accidents. We literally just did CPR on people. The local emergency room had refrigerated trucks with bodies in it. It was crazy. So at the time I had a brand new baby. And when I came home one day, I said, babe, I don't know if I could stay in the house. Like there was still so much uncertainty, and we didn't have any, we were still doing hashtag, 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Right. We just didn't know. So I ended up moving out of my house for almost 9 weeks, and my mother-in-law moved into my house to help out with the kids. And during that 9 weeks, I just literally crushed through all sorts of material, podcasts, audiobooks, Jake and Gino, videos, hopped on as many calls as I could. Zoom was my best friend. And I networked like crazy, and I started calling brokers and lenders and introducing myself, and really kind of just 9 weeks of uninterrupted work, and I will say that was probably the thing that moved the needle the most for me. I'll throw it back to you.
No, that's tremendous. And I saw in some of the info that you sent over that it was the Jake and Gino program that you did.
Yeah.
Am I right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And I went to, we have neither of us have, I think, any affiliation officially with those guys, but
no.
Shout out to them. I have Gino's been on the podcast, and have loads of respect for both of those guys, and got to go to Money Master or Multifamily Mastery for this last fall and early winter, and that was a game changer, and such a who's who of. Did you speak there?
I did.
That's right.
Yes. On that Saturday, I spoke. I was gonna say, maybe you were in a food coma.
No,
it was right after lunch, so I was worried nobody was going to be there, but it ended up being a packed house, so it was unbelievable.
Right. No, I remember it being moving and inspiring. So yeah, for sure. And I also remember having it on my list of things to do to come up and talk to you and introduce myself. And I don't think that that ever happened, unfortunately, in person, but here we are. So
here we are. I love it.
Making up for it. Me too. I'm really stoked. So, lots of takeaways from your story, and I can't wait to get into hearing kind of how you built your empire and the wares and all of that about that. But, the rich dad, poor dad thing, it just strikes me as it's so common to hear that story. I mean, and not to minimize it at all, because I think it's just remarkable. It speaks volumes about that book and about how he was able to capture the concepts in the really important concepts about buying cash flowing assets and owning cash flowing assets in a fun way, in a way that like everybody could kind of get their head around. And I was thinking while you were talking about it, how many, probably hundreds of thousands of people he's responsible for making probably millionaires out of, like, or multimillionaires out of, really. It's quite a book. And listeners, obviously, if you haven't read it, or there's a lot of other books that are part of the Rich Dad Poor Dad series, and a lot of other resources. But if you haven't read Rich Dad Poor Dad, it's put it on your list, put it on your Audible list or whatever it takes, because it is a game changer, and people affectionately just call it the purple book, right? Like,
yeah. So listen, I mean, like that is the number one personal finance book of all time, right?
Yeah.
So that has to say something to somebody out there that's listening. And I would just say that, like, as a blue collar guy who didn't grow up with means, very, very modest upbringing, that book spoke to me in such a way that it all just clicked. It was as if the lights were turned on, the curtains were pulled up, and the sunlight was coming right in the windows. And I hate to sound dramatic, but I mean, that's how powerful that book was, right?
Yeah.
And that book is really the strategy of like real estate investing. And then his next book is called the Cashflow Quadrant, and that's more of the tactics, right? And it pulls in the strategy, but it's really the tactics. And this is not stuff that is taught in schools. It's not stuff that a lot of parents will teach to their kids if they don't have that financial education. And it's just one way to do it, right? There's a Dave Ramsey's out there. That's one way to do some stuff. I mean, that's the cohort that you find yourself in. But then, a lot of people I talk to, they'll say like, yeah, like I subscribe to the Dave Ramsey no debt model for my personal side, but for my business side, I subscribe to Robert Kiyosaki and his, savers are losers, debtors are winners, philosophy. And how to pay less taxes and all that stuff. So it was an incredible book. So I highly recommend, all your listeners to head out and get that one.
Yeah. And then, education plus action equals results. I love that. That's a great formula, a great takeaway. And like you said, it's powerful. It's you got to have both of those things. And I think that there's definitely a group of people that overeducate and under action, if you will. Yes. And I just caution listeners to, rather than come at it from a negative, I'd say, like, if you feel like you may be in that group, just kick it into gear a little bit more and start doing the things that Tim talked about doing here, like getting on the Zoom calls, doing the networking meetings, going to the meetup groups. I've mentioned this on the last probably 8 or 10 podcasts, but I've got a list of virtual meetups that you can email me for if you want. Tate at glequitygroup.com. Shoot me an email and I'll send you a list of virtual meetup groups that you can go to every single week. And so there's that. Those are the things, the relationships, like you said, Tim, the education part of, and you were talking about your group, the group of people you have around you. It's like the education piece is big, and you got to have that. And you got to know the language. You got to know cap rates and NOIs and occupancies and occupancy rates and how to underwrite an insurance line item and taxes. And there's definitely a lot of specialized knowledge, but I think at the end of the day, this really is a relationship game. And everything happens in the course of our relationships and our conversations and our emails and our LOIs and our communications with each other. And So to me, that's where the rubber meets the road. So tell me a little bit about, going from your 3 units to 700 plus units in 18 months. Like, was that before, during, after? Did that period of time start when you did the coaching mentorship program, or how did that all work together?
Yeah, I mean, so like I said, I bought that 3 family in November of 19. I joined Jake and Gino March, basically 1st of 2020. And I didn't close on my first deal until I think September of 2020. So a full 6 months of, coming out of pocket for the coaching, right? And putting in the reps and underwriting deals and networking and trying to do joint ventures and strategic partnerships with people. And being in a group, that's exactly what happened. I had an opportunity to join a group in their acquisition of a 43 unit in Pennsylvania. It was going to be a syndication. And at that point, I'd never done a syndication, right? But being able to be a part of that group and see how a syndication, works from the back end, and all the work that goes into it, and due diligence and raising capital and, doing webinars and, all that stuff. It was incredible. It was an incredible learning opportunity for me. I'll be forever grateful for my coach, Chris, who helped me out with that. And really gave me my start, right? Because, Michael Blanc talks about the law of the first deal, right?
Right. Yep.
You get the first deal and all of a sudden you're rolling into deals 2, 3, and 4 in quick succession. And that's kind of what happened. So, I'd never raised money before. I didn't have a list. I didn't have any email, CRMs. I didn't have anything. I had nothing, right? And I just said, let me think about 30 or 40 people who I think might be, in my network, who might be interested in this. And that's what I did. I just sent them individual emails and, invited them to the webinar. And then a couple of people invested. And I said, holy cow, that actually worked. I didn't think I could raise money at all. And then listen, now I had some credibility. Now I had a track record that I was working on. Now people, I had some massive limiting beliefs about being able to be a multifamily investor because, to a lot of people, I'm Tim the fireman and Tim the ER nurse. I wasn't Tim the multifamily syndicator or Tim the real estate investor at all to anybody really, except for people who were in my immediate circle. So, I had to really kind of, step into that new identity. I had to really kind of, tell people what I was doing. And I remember Brendan Turner on a Bigger Pockets podcast, or probably several of them, he always kind of says, like, you have to tell people what you're doing.
Yeah.
You have to educate people, because
right.
Nobody really knows exactly what's people. I talk to people, I talk to investors every day, and some of them are very high net worth, and they'll be like, how come I don't know about this? How come I've been doing this? I've been a successful entrepreneur, a successful small business owner, successful physician, whatever. And I've never heard of this. How is it that Tim the fireman, Tim the ER nurse is now educating me about how multifamily syndication works? And it's just one of those things, in 2012 with the Jobs Act, non-accredited investors were kind of able to participate in these private placements. Accredited investors, when somebody does a 506c offering, now they could really, put their marketing into high gear. So like, you really had to know somebody who was doing these types of opportunities in the past to be able to be a part of something like this. If you didn't know anybody who was doing it, you wouldn't even know what the right question to ask was. So 2012 kind of opened up a lot of this business to a lot more people. And that's why I'm so passionate about it, right? It's changed my life. It's changed some of my investors, investing lives. And that's why, we're just so passionate about it. So we did the 43 unit. I don't know, about a month later, we partnered with another person in our group, and we did 144 units in South Carolina. And then as we're finishing up, that deal, we're doing another 148 units in Sarasota, Florida. So that's kind of how we rounded out 2020, and then, we really had an inflection point. And when I say we, it's my brother, Greg, and I are, the two principals of Cityside Capital. He's down in Virginia, and I'm still up in the New York area. And we had to say to ourselves, all right, neither of us are going to be moving our families to the Sun Belt or to Florida, or Georgia or the Carolinas. So we're not going to be the boots on the ground. And as you know, multifamily is a team sport. Real estate in general is a team sport. So we had to really find our spot on the team. And what we found was that we could really raise capital. Just growing up in the New York City area, just our networks in general, we were able to really have our story resonate with a lot of people, especially right in the beginning. But the problem is, Tate, that you can't just speed date sponsors and just raise capital for people, because that's going to land you in federal prison probably. The SEC frowns upon that, because really when you're raising capital for deals, if you don't have a real material participation in the operation of that general partnership, it's essentially a violation of the securities law. So at the time, when we first got started, there was a couple of people who were getting spoken to by the SEC. And that kind of sent shockwaves down my spine, being like, well, should I even raise money for this deal? I mean, I'm new, I don't want to step out of bounds. But then it's as if it was like divine intervention. We got connected with these two gentlemen who were starting up a multifamily syndication focused broker dealer, right? So to be a part of a broker dealer, you have to have what's called, your FINRA license. You have to be a licensed representative for the broker dealer to sell securities. So we had an opportunity to join this, this startup platform that was going to be focused on, connecting investors with vetted sponsors and vetted deals across the US. And the only condition was that you had to take 3 exams. And I wasn't super excited about that, but, we had to take the Series 82 exam, the Series 63, and then something called the SIE, which is the Securities Industries Essentials, So once we did that, and we were like, this is perfect. This is exactly what we're looking for. We're looking to really focus on investor relations and raising capital. And now we can do so for some big name sponsors, and we're doing it legally. We're doing it with our licenses. And part of the pull to go towards that platform was that, we were still kind of new, right? But we had an experienced capital raiser running the show. We had a compliance team, we had a legal team, we have an underwriting team. When these sponsors want to be considered for our raising platform, they had to go on through a due diligence process that cost a lot of money, in my opinion. But once they're onboarded, then they have access to our funds. And as a platform, there's 18 other groups like Cityside Capital on this platform. We raised over $100 million last year in 2021. And we're looking to do about 150 million in 2022. So it was really like the best of both worlds. We were able to kind of concentrate on content and education for our investors and having great substantive calls with investors, and add value to the operators by being able to bring equity and adding value to the investors, because we're taking all the guesswork out of their lives. Because if you're an investor and you should be in real estate, or you desire to be in real estate, and you have capital to place, but you don't know where to start, right? A lot of people just say, I don't know where to start. I don't have time for the education. I don't have time for coaching. I don't have time to go rehab a couple of units and figure it all out and not make any mistakes. So you know what? I'm just not going to do it. I'm gonna go back to my index funds. So we kind of take that uncertainty out of the equation by being able to be licensed. People feel good with that. And then the fact that we do a deep dive and due diligence on the operators and each individual deal, they feel great about that, Sure. And we're able to put a good product in front of people.
So, and then do you end up being like co-GP and deals at that point?
Yep.
Cool.
That's exactly right.
And that's basically how you guys have built your empire.
That's it. That was the secret sauce. So
3,000 plus doors.
Yeah. Deals 1 through 3 was, just Greg and I, strategically networking and getting into deals with other guys, and then deals 4 through I guess 10 or 11 now have all come in quick succession this year. And yeah, they're all over the Sun Belt and the Southeast US.
That's awesome. So when somebody like me, like my team, because, my team really took a different stab at the elephant, so to speak. That's not the best analogy. But bite of the elephant's kind of gross too. But anyway,
No, but I love it. It's nice. It's nice and graphic.
Yeah, we really got good and have stayed good and gotten better at finding good deals, negotiating good deals, doing good due diligence, and we've done a fair amount of capital raising. We have great investors, but that particular part of our business has it just kind of naturally, for us, the organic growth was finding good deals, getting those done, and doing whatever it takes to get them done, and then you kind of move on to the next set of capital, and then there's only so far your friends, family network goes, as you know. And
Yes, sir.
so, yeah, so as things have progressed for us, we've looked at, well, we have co-GPs on a couple of our deals, and in addition to a lot of other things they do, they brought, obviously, some LP investors with them. So how does one go about getting to work with Cityside Capital? I guess what I'm getting around to, like, if
Yeah.
I'm in my seat, from where I'm sitting, and or somebody, say, listeners out there, and finds a good deal, and wants to work with somebody like you, what's the process look like?
So yes, I mean, if you wanted to be a capital raiser, I'll do that one first, and then I can pivot into the operator side. So the capital raiser side is, having been able to raise, I would say at least $500,000 to $1 million for a deal, maybe on a consistent basis. And then really, taking that SIE exam. And then once you pass that, you have to be sponsored by the broker dealer to take your SEC, your FINRA exams, the 82 and the 63. And then once you pass that, it's just being onboarded onto the platform. And, we do things a little differently as registered reps, because we're not able to forecast cash on cash returns, IRR, equity multiples. So our deal decks are a touch different. We have to, do a sensitivity table almost to show people what the range of equity multiple might be, what the range of cash on cash would be. We have to cite all of our sources, it's just stuff like that.
Sure.
And then we're held to a little bit of a higher standard than, a regular, capital raiser would be, because we have to really kind of abide by what's called a suitability standard. So, we have to make sure that these private placement opportunities are a suitable investment alternative for the investor. And we do that by, having them take a questionnaire online. So that's basically the capital raiser side. On the operator side, it's, there's a couple calls, some intro calls in the beginning to see if we'd be a good fit. And then if you wanted to move to the next step, there's an onboarding process where, the operator would pay our platform a fee, and that fee would be used to do a deep dive. So your past deals, your past underwriting, your business plan. Are you sticking to it? Are you paying investors like you said you're going to pay the investors? What kind of debt structures do you use? How are your entities set up? And going through your old subscription documents, make sure that they're the way they need to be.
Sure.
And then just agreeing to the terms. So there's a cost of capital for operators. So the way that we get paid is from the operators, right? So there's a cost of capital for the LPs that we bring in. And we also have different terms for institutional investors that we can bring into deals. And then once we're everybody's agreed upon and we're all good to go, then you're onboarded, and now we're ready to go. So once you're on and you get a deal under contract, you would give our platform a heads up. Hey, we have a 225 unit, $20 million property, whatever it might be. Here's the underwriting, here's the T12, here's the debt terms that we were quoted at. Here's the due diligence items. And then we would also do our own due diligence on each individual deal, come up with a report, and then we'd kind of say yes or no and find out how much allocation you might need. And then that's how we generally work. And that all happens in like, a week or so. It sounds like a lot, but it's about a week lead time.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds doable, and as an operator, listeners, like, some of this may sound a little bit like kind of next level, but this is your future. Like, this is, as you scale up, and chances are, if you're listening to this show, you're thinking about larger scale multifamily, apartment buildings and whatnot. But as you scale up, these capital sources like Tim's, Cityside Capital here, can make it so that you can get nice, big, good deals done that you otherwise probably couldn't get done with your own equity raising capabilities. And we didn't do as well as you did. We went from 20 units to about 570 in 18 months. And for us, there was growing pain in that for sure. And maxing out our own equity raising and bringing on co-GP and even a little bit of pref equity was certainly a big learning process. And stuff that, there's some stuff that we won't ever do again that we did in that trajectory. But, at the end of the day, like, this is about getting the deals done, getting things, getting to the closing table, getting the deal closed, and moving on to the next one and growing together, ideally. Right. I'm sure that you're in the long-term relationship game in this world.
Yeah. And, just so like listeners, like you can certainly work with family offices, pref equity groups and the like. The problem is, and I'm probably sure you probably dealt with this with the pref equity, is that, you don't get limited partner type terms, right? With pref equity groups, you have to go institutional terms. There's lockout periods, there's hurdles, there's all sorts of, there's voting rights in the LLC, rights of first refusal. I mean, there's a lot that goes into the deal, and, operators can tend to, lose the autonomy of the deal. So yes, they get one big check written and it feels good to have that, kind of that box checked. And it's certainly, there's great pref equity groups out there. We've done deals with pref equity groups. But again, the value that our platform would bring is kind of to solve that problem, right?
Yeah.
We can just kind of bring that middle market equity to operators without the headaches, I would say.
I like it. Well, we may be talking sooner than later. We're working on, I just submitted an LOI this morning on 251 units, and we're
awesome.
Fingers crossed on that. And so, it's about a $5 million capital raise we're looking at, something like that, for that one. So, and again, like, listeners, the more options you have here, the better too. So, like, Tim's somebody that you probably want to get to know and at least get in touch with on LinkedIn. What I know your website is fantastic. I was looking at it before the show. Remind me of your website, domain name, and also just any other good way for a listener to get a hold of you.
Yeah, so you can head over to the website. It's citysidecap.com. My email address is just tim@citysidecap.com. I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn, Facebook, and I'm learning to be more active on Instagram. But yeah, those are the best ways to kind of check us out. And then we just started our own podcast called the Passive Income Brothers Podcast with my brother Greg and I. So you can check that out.
Super smart. Yeah, you guys are really making waves, so to speak. That's awesome. And to bring the thought leadership platform in with the podcast is such a positive step. I mean, I've been doing this for over 2 years now, and just love it. I've said this for 2 years. It's like the coolest thing I've ever done professionally.
Yeah, sure.
As part of my job or career or business, whatever you want to call it. And it's so enriching, to get to spend like these last 45 minutes or so with you and on, your growth, get into your story a little bit and get, there's some great takeaways from your story.
Thank you.
Let me ask you this. Is there like an ideal deal that you look for? In other words, what's your criteria like? Do you do, class C value ag? Is it class B momentum plays? What do you like the most?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing a rotation back into, some desire for value add plays, maybe like a C plus asset in a B neighborhood, something like that.
Yeah.
But really, I mean, we're open to obviously A class, B class, A class asset, B class asset, but also in A and B areas.
Mm-hmm.
We really try to stay away from, any sort of non-desirable areas, I guess I should say. Is that good to say?
Sure.
Really, I mean, our group is kind of comfortable in the the $5 to $10 million range per raise. And we tend to spread it out over our sponsors. We work with 8, soon to be 9 sponsors at the moment. And we do multifamily and self-storage, but really the multifamily is where it's at right now. And it's a resilient asset class. And,
Sure
it all comes down to the underwriting, the strength of the deal, the strength of the market, and the strength of the operator.
Yeah. Got it. Exciting stuff. So you guys are going to do 150 million this year in 2022, you think? What's big picture look like for you guys from here forward? Do you have a 3-year plan, 5-year plan?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still working as a lieutenant in the fire department. I just love that job, and I was lucky enough to get into the job when there was a 20-year retirement still available. So who knows? Maybe at 20, I'll walk away from the firehouse and then go city side full time. But yeah, I mean, we just love connecting with investors. We love this game. We love this industry. So I could see us, just continuing to grow investor wise, both retail and institutional, and maybe even doing our own deals at one point. So it'll be fun. It'll be fun to see where we go.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Well, it's been fantastic to connect with you and to get to learn from you. And again, thanks for all you do for all of us and the general public. And thanks for being a thought leader and a contributor in the apartment investing world, multifamily space.
Yeah, thanks a lot. That means a lot to me. So thanks for having me on your show, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah, you betcha. Listeners, thanks for listening to another episode of The Apartment Guys, and we will catch you next week. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for listening to The Apartment Guys with Tate Seamer. Tate and friends are grateful to have you as a loyal listener. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe, rate, review, and share with friends on your Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, or any other podcast platform. Also, check out Tate's YouTube channel for videos of many of these episodes and more. Until next time, take massive action steps and rock on.